Have you ever done something and not realized that you did it? Or have you ever done something so often that it requires really little effort at all to do? These are habits. And according to a study done by Duke University, 40% of the actions that we do throughout the day are done habitually. Now, this is kind of a scary thought, but at the same time, it kind of shows how important habits are to individuals in our daily lives. So that's why I decided to talk about this subject today. First, I want to go ahead and define what habits are. I want to go over how habits work, and I also think that it's important to talk about how to change habits. So according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, habits are the usual way of doing something, or something somebody does on a regular basis. Now, how do these habits work? According to Charles Duhigg in his book called The Power of Habits, he breaks it down in a three-part system called the cue, routine, and reward system. So in a very simplistic example, I'm going to say that thirst, for example, I'm thirsty. The cue is I'm thirsty. The routine is I'm going to go to the fridge and I'm going to grab something to drink. The reward is I'm going to feel replenished and refreshed. So this is a very simple example of how the cue, routine, and reward system works. Now, how do you change habits? Now, a lot of companies put a lot of money into trying to figure this out. For example, like Alcohol Anonymous. And they do a lot of focus on the cue portion of it. They talk to their participants about staying away from things that cause them to want to drink alcohol. For example, staying away from the bars, staying away from the cigarettes, staying away from this. But if you've been a long time drinker and you've been doing this for a lot of years, these are a lot of cues. That means you've pretty much got to stay away from everything, you know. So how do you change these habits when you have these strongholds, these really strong habits? Well, this is a really tough question. But in Charles Duhigg's book, he talks about changing the routine portion of it. So you have this cue. I'm going to take smoking, for example. You have this cue. Let's say you come home from work. The first thing you do is you have a cigarette. So the cue is always going to be the same. Is you're going to come home from work sometime or another. You're going to come home from work. Routine, you smoke your cigarette. Reward is you have that nicotine fix, the nicotine high. Changing that routine to something more healthy, for example, let's say running. This releases endorphins and actually gives you a natural high in itself also. So this is a great thing to replace your smoking habits with. So let's say that's what you want to do. But the first day you come home from work and you slip up and you completely forget that you were supposed to go running and you have your cigarette. You're going to throw in the towel? Not quite yet. As you're smoking your cigarette, you finish, you put it down, you can actually make efforts for the next day in order to change those habits. Let's say taking those shoes and putting them by the front door so that way when you come home, you won't have to worry about forgetting. You'll get home, you'll see the shoes, and now you know you have to make a conscious effort at that point, whether you want to smoke your cigarette or you want to go running. Now when you get to that point, you get to those crossroads, it's up to you. You've got to make that change, whether you're going to smoke or whether you're going to go running. I want to go off subject and talk about the power of crisis real quick. And this is, let's say something drastically happens in your life. Let's say you have a heart attack. It might be a good idea to quit smoking, and you might just do it right off the jump without any little effort at all. And this happens to people, but you don't want to get to that point where you have a crisis in your life or a big change, a life-changing event in your life to change some bad habits. So I want to talk about Gardner's 2012 article where he talks about intrinsic and extrinsic motivational factors. Extrinsic motivational factors are things like stepfather or family members or the doctor trying to push you to quit smoking. They're trying to help you quit smoking. But if you don't want to change, it's not really going to work. So the best way of doing it is by being intrinsically motivated. And how you do that is you find something that you really care about and using that to motivate you. And I'm going to use kids, for example, because they can have some real emotional course in people's lives. Let's say the thought of them being disappointed because you smoke, or even worse, the thought of them smoking when they get older. Using that to help you quit is a great way to making lifestyle changes. That's the key right there, is lifestyle changes. Not just simple, not just quit smoking for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. You can do that. People quit for months, but they haven't really changed yet. They haven't made those lifestyle changes. I'm gonna end with a short story about a scholar and a wealthy man's son. So the wealthy man takes his son to a scholar and says that my son is picking up some bad habits and I want you to help him change them. So the scholar takes the son to the woods and he tells the child, the kid, to pull some mushrooms out of the ground. So the child goes over and pulls some mushrooms out of the ground. He then asks him to pull some slightly bigger weeds from the ground. So he goes over and pulls some slightly bigger weeds from the ground. Then he tells him to go pull some a small brush. It's a little difficult, but he's able to do it. Lastly, he tells him to try to pull a small tree out of the ground. He goes over, tries to pull it out of the ground, and tells the scholar that it's impossible. And the scholar tells him, this is very similar to how habits work. The older we get, the more deep-rooted these habits become, and the harder they are to change. So with that, I want to challenge you guys to change a habit in your life, whether it be small and quit drinking soda, or whether it be big. You've been smoking for 20 years and you want to decide to quit. And I want you to use the cue routine reward system to being able to analyze your habits and trying to find some intrinsic motivational factors to help you. I hope that you are all able to learn something from this video. Thank you for your time.